What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Cricket Magic 5G and the Cricket Ovation 3. Now, as always, if you end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Cricket Magic 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 286, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Cricket Ovation 3, we're getting a really large 6.82-inch IPS LCD display. This phone also has a 720p resolution, a PPI of 246, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio. So in general, for what they are, I do think both phones have decent displays, but on one hand, with the Magic 5G, I feel like this phone is a little bit brighter. It's kind of hard to tell from this video, but when I'm actually using the phones, I have noticed the Cricket Magic 5G does feel a tiny bit brighter, and also with a 90Hz refresh rate versus 60Hz with the Ovation 3. With the Magic 5G, the movement on the screen is a bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel a bit more premium to use. But honestly, this difference is really subtle, and on the other hand, with the Ovation 3 at again 6.82 inches versus 6.6 with the Magic 5G. The Ovation 3 is quite a bit larger, so in general, I feel like if you're on your phone a bit more, the Ovation 3 will have the advantage here, because having a larger display, in my opinion, is a bit more important than the refresh rate. But either way, despite not being amazing per se, for what they are, both phones do have pretty good displays here. So if you are looking for a really affordable entry-level phone and you want at least a decent display, then either phone will still be perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to storage, the Cricket Magic 5G has a huge advantage here with 64GB of internal storage versus the Ovation 3 with only 32. And also keep in mind, both phones do support microSD card expansion too. But yeah, with the Ovation 3, I feel like at this point in late 2023, 32GB is really just not enough. So kind of disappointing here, because in lots of other ways, this is really a great phone, but between the two, of course, the Magic 5G having 64 definitely does have an advantage. So if storage is important to you, then you will want to go with the Magic 5G. But again, at least both phones do support microSD card expansion, so if you have maybe a lot of photos and videos, for example, you can always offload that stuff onto a microSD card, and that will make a difference. Now, for security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the back. So definitely nice to get both options, but starting with the Magic 5G, let's give the fingerprint scanners a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the Ovation 3. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners worked real well, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now, taking a look at the camera setups here. Up front, both phones have water drop notches for the selfie cameras. With the Cricket Magic 5G, we got 5 megapixels, and the Ovation 3 has 8. Then on the back, with the Magic 5G, we got a dual camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. And with the Ovation 3, we got a triple camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So when it comes to camera features, the Ovation 3 does have an advantage, considering this phone has both an ultra wide camera and a macro camera, whereas with the Magic 5G, unfortunately this phone has neither. So if you are taking a lot of pictures and maybe you want a higher variety of features, the Ovation 3 will be a much better choice. But also keep in mind, when it comes to photo quality, both phones are pretty much equal. And that being said, they're not bad per se, but compared to a much higher end device, obviously a higher end device is going to be significantly better, since after all, these phones are both under $200. In fact, they're in the low 100 range for that matter, so you can really only expect so much. That being said though, for what they are, I do think both phones take pretty good photos. Now, to give you an idea of what they can do, here's some pictures taken with the Cricket Magic 5G. So overall, definitely decent photo quality, not really amazing or anything, but again, for what it is, it does get the job done. So if you want to take the occasional decently nice photo for Instagram, for example, it will be good enough for that. But of course, if you're really into something like mobile photography, you will want to get something much higher end than this. And then here's some pictures taken with the Cricket Ovation 3, and really same kind of thing, honestly, in my opinion. The photo quality is essentially the same here, so the real difference comes down to the features. On one hand, if you don't really care about having an ultra-wide camera and a macro camera, then the Cricket Magic 5G will still be perfectly fine. But if you do want a few more camera features, again, the Cricket Ovation 3 will have an advantage. Now for the RAM and processor, this is one area where the Cricket Magic 5G has a huge advantage, considering first of all, as the name implies, this is a 5G phone, whereas the Cricket Ovation 3 is not. But with the Cricket Magic 5G, we are getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor, and with the Cricket Ovation 3, we're getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A25. Now, keep in mind, despite not being nearly as fast, the Cricket Ovation 3 is still going to be good enough for basic daily activities, so for occasional web browsing, social media use, watching videos, and maybe some light mobile gaming, it will still get the job done. But if you do want a faster experience in general, the Cricket Magic 5G of course will be significantly faster. And again, it is a 5G phone, so if you want 5G connectivity, then obviously this phone will be the best choice here. But in general, I would say the Magic 5G is significantly faster than the Ovation 3, so if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, maybe doing slightly more demanding activities like maybe you're playing more games on your phone and stuff like that, the Cricket Magic 5G will have an advantage. But again, for basic daily activities, either phone here will get the job done, so the Ovation 3, despite not being as fast, is still really not that bad for what it is. Now for the batteries, these phones are the same, both having 4000 mAh batteries and supporting 10W fast charging, so keep in mind, if the battery is really a priority for you, then you might want to skip these phones because despite not being terrible, getting a phone that has a 5000 mAh battery is really not that hard at this point in late 2023. In this day and age, I feel like most phones have a battery of that size, so 4000 is really not that big anymore. But that being said, in my experience, both phones do have really good battery life. I mean, I've never had any issues, and I personally don't really charge them that often. So yeah, if you're really just looking for something that's gonna last throughout the day and you still do charge your phone every night, either phone will be okay. But again, if you really do want a phone with an amazing battery, you can do better. Now for the software, with the Cricket Magic 5G, we are getting Android 13, whereas unfortunately with the Ovation 3, this phone does only have Android 12. So that is a little too bad considering at this point we're on Android 14, so neither phone here is exactly up to date, but considering they are really entry-level Cricket branded phones, I'm not really that surprised. But also, when it comes to really entry-level phones like these, a lot of people don't particularly care that much about the software anyway, so if that's you, then either phone will be okay. But I mean, if you're going out of your way to get a phone, I feel like you might as well get a decently up-to-date software, so by that logic, the Cricket Magic 5G does have a bit of an advantage. But again, if you're not really that concerned about it, keep in mind I personally haven't had any performance issues with either phone. Things do run really well, so it could really go either way. Also keep in mind, both phones do have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you'll be happy to know you can use that feature with either phone no problem. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now, in general, I feel like the main advantages here will go to the Cricket Magic 5G because this phone does have a lot more storage, and in some situations this might not matter, but when we're comparing 64GB to 32, in my opinion 32 is nearly unusable, so by just that alone I feel like the Cricket Magic 5G does have a huge advantage, and it also has a much better processor, having 5G connectivity and just better speed in general. And with Android 13 versus Android 12, it is at least a bit newer, so that is still something to keep in mind. But on the other hand, the Cricket Ovation 3 has a much larger display, which definitely could give you a better experience if you're consuming a lot of content, and the camera is a bit better too. So overall, if you're really not putting a lot of stuff on your phone and you're really using it for super basic activities, but you do like to watch maybe a lot of videos for example, and you like to take photos, the Cricket Ovation 3 will have an advantage. But if you're on your phone a bit more, maybe doing slightly more demanding activities, and you are someone who tends to download lots of apps and games and stuff like that, then in that case, the Cricket Magic 5G will be a better choice. But this concludes my comparison between the Cricket Magic 5G and the Cricket Ovation 3. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Cleepus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.